G'day ladies and gents, and welcome aboard the Beaufighter 21 in IL-2 1946. So recently I've been wanting to fly more simulation, but I've been looking for some actual real-world mission structure rather than just multiplayer deathmatch dogfights or bomb everything missions. Thankfully I have 1946 installed, and it fits the bill nicely. IL-2 1946 was developed by 1C Maddox and was published by Ubisoft in 2006. It's still considered to be a bit of a masterpiece of design by even today's standards. While the graphics are dated, this was the game that War Thunder had to knock off in order to get the title of most aircraft in a single game. However, the difference, as you can see, is all the aircraft in 1946 have cockpits. The scope of 1946 is still sort of unmatched today by any simulation on the market. This game has full campaigns for many of the nations that took part in World War II, and the correct locations for these campaigns, the correct mission structuring, and the context for these campaigns. Today we're flying out the RAAF Beaufighter 21 campaign, and our goal of the day is to go and mess with a couple of Japanese runways.
Heading 0, altitude 10.
So we're accelerating down the runway for takeoff. Tail is already up off the ground. Honestly, I could rotate and bring the aircraft up now, but yeah, I just end up using all the runway anyway, and honestly, probably a few feet more than all the runway. It is so nice to actually fly a Beaufighter that has a cockpit in it. This is one of the things that really annoys me about the Beaufighter in War Thunder. It doesn't have one and never has, despite being one of the oldest aircraft in the game, and there's no reason for it not to have one. I mean, if you have a look around the cockpit here, this is pretty well modelled for what's actually inside of it. And as you can see, it's just a big twin-engine fighter cockpit. There's nothing particularly special or difficult about modelling it. Even looking behind you, the real Beaufighter has a big metal plate behind the pilot's head. To get into the cockpit, he has to get through a flap hatch that is at the bottom of that metal plate behind the pilot, behind the seat. You can't see through that once you're in the seat and actually flying. So, yeah, there's no reason for this thing not to have a cockpit in War Thunder. It's as simple as that. But anyways, back to the mission. Our flight today consists of 3 squadrons. Wombat is our vanguard. They will be engaging Japanese fighters over the airfields as we are on approach. The main attack force consists of 6 Beaufighter 21s, of which I am flying number 6. We depart Port Moresby and will be heading straight for the Japanese airfields. These are on the coast southeast of Dobodura. The attacking force is to climb out to 12,500 feet to get above the maximum firing altitude of the AAA that the Japanese have deployed in the area, and to proceed directly to target. The attacking force consists of 6 Beaufighter 21s, of which I'll be flying number 6, and an additional 6 escort P-39s. Once the attack is completed, Allied aircraft will proceed to the northwest, following the coastline to the north of Dobodura, before turning back towards Port Moresby. Flight time to and from the combat zone should be a little over 30 minutes each way. Those of you who are familiar with the layout and the towns in that particular part of New Guinea may be a little bit confused with Dobodura as a town. The map that I showed is actually from 1942, so the names have changed since then. The town's name now is Gairua, and the actual location marked on the map is the Gairua Airfield Complex. So, we've skipped about 30 minutes of the flight here, as it was rather uneventful, and we're about
1 minute to target. Heading 060, altitude 01.
Isn't it wonderful when the radio actually answers your comments for you? Yeah, we're about 1 minute out of position. Now, we're currently descending from 12,500 down to 6,000 feet. This is to get ourselves into position for a 45-degree dive on the airfield, so we're now in the flat corridor. The P-39 escort that we had with us is now broken off to assist Wombat. At this point, Wombat has lost 1 aircraft, and they are engaged. Now, the mission targets are fairly open here. It's any parked aircraft, any emplacements around the runways, any parked vehicles, anything we want. I'm going to be lining up for the aircraft on the central airfield, the parked aircraft. I'm going to make 1 pass with guns, and then I'm going to turn back over the beach, come back on the airfield, and make my rocket pass.
Wombat 1. Yep, coming. Wombat 2. Go.
Anybody can fight.
Attention, beginning our attack run. Vehicle, commence the attack. This is 2. Roger, beginning our attack.
This is 3. Copy. Attacking now.
This is 1. Roger, beginning our attack. Attention, 1 minute to target. Heading 030, altitude 01. Attention, beginning our attack run. Vehicle, commence the attack.
This is second element. Roger, beginning our attack.
Where's that one here?
Anybody? This is 7. Damn.
I need some help.
Can't maneuver.
Wombat 1. On the way. What the hell? Stay with your leader. Heading 330. Altitude 05. Over.
Agent, man, 1 o'clock.
What the hell? Stay with your leader. Stay on course. Where's that one here?
Right, on my feet. 7. Anybody?
Need a hand over here.
Can't maneuver.
A successful pass, but I was probably a little bit low there. Counted 6 of 8 Ki-45s destroyed parked on the runway. Now at this point I'm heading back towards the rest of my flight, which has been attacking the next airfield over. I'm going to swing in and make a pass on it before following them back to the same airfield that I was just attacking. My main reason for leaving that first airfield is the AAA guns around the airfield were starting to fire and were starting to track me at that point. Hitting them hard and fast like that, it will take them a few seconds to respond, but they have managed to sort themselves out, and I don't particularly want to get shot down. And this wasn't the optimal angle to approach the parked aircraft bays. It put the dirt walls for the enclosures in between me and the target. However, I did manage to take out another aircraft there, so the aircraft count is now up to 7. So turning the Beaufighter back over to line up back on the aircraft enclosures from the first runway I attacked to see if we can finish off any more of them.
This is 1. I got him. He's on fire. Number 5. Ceasefire. Ceasefire. That's a friendly target. 2.
Wombat 1.
Where's inventory? Get the bastard off me. Attention. Let's do it one more time.
7.
Over.
Damn. Can't maneuver.
I did get guns on one more Ki-45 in there, but it doesn't look like it was actually destroyed. The rest of the squadron have been working the runway over hard, however. AAA positions have been sprayed down along with infantry. Most of them are now on their exit path out of the area, however. I'm going to make one more pass because I would like to finish off all 8 of these Ki-45s.
Number 3. Return to base immediately.
And this is why in these situations greed is not good. I did manage to hit the last aircraft that I missed in the formation, bringing my count for that runway up to 7, and 1 from the other runway, bringing the count of Ki-45s down on the runway up to 8.
Number 2.
And then I took a massive hit from AAA.
Number 2. Return to base immediately. Over.
Yes, you're seeing that correctly. I've just had my right-hand side elevator, my left-hand side aileron, and my rudder all blown off the aircraft. But of course, when I was flying this, I'm inside the cockpit. I can see I'm missing the left aileron, and that's why the aircraft is handling pretty piss poor at this point, but I can't see the damage in the tail. And I really haven't got too much time to experiment around with the flight characteristics because we also took hits in both engines. The right engine is significantly worse than the left, so at this point it's time for me to proceed to the second waypoint and get the hell out of here before somebody shoots at me again, because I can't take another hit like that. I've just opened up the cowling flaps to cool down both the engines as they were beginning to overheat. I've had to back off the RPMs and adjust the fuel mixtures accordingly. I have to fly with them as gently as possible because I've got at least a half-hour flight to get home.
Wombat 1.
Thankfully, no Japanese fighters picked up on my trail, and as a result I was able to hit the first waypoint and begin my trip all the way back to Port Moresby with little issue or little interruption. Which is a good thing, because there's no way known I would have been able to fight off Japanese fighters in my current state. The engines are not sounding brilliant at the moment. The only real issue I ran into was right here. This is the Owen Stanley Range. It runs right down the central portion of this section of New Guinea and peaks out at Mount Victoria at an elevation of 4,073 metres above sea level. This section here may have been the part where I caused myself a few issues, which I'll run into later on. The aircraft did not want to get the altitude it needed to climb over this mountain range, and there is no way around this mountain range to get home. I'm leaving this part in the video because it's something that I don't think a lot of people actually think of when you're flying a flight sim. As a general rule, you fly into combat, you do the combat, you take your damage, you get your kills, and if you're still alive, you fly home. But in some places in the world, the actual task of flying home, especially after you've taken some damage, was not always as easy as one might think. But nevertheless, we managed to clear the mountain range and we are on our final approach into Port Moresby. We're just through the clouds and through the coast, and you can see just ahead the runway that we took off from. However, I'm not going to be using that one. I know the aircraft is fairly damaged. I've worked out on the way back that I've at least lost partial, if not all, of my rudder control. The elevator is heavy, it's clearly damaged. I don't know how bad it is at this point, and I'm a little concerned about what's going to happen when this aircraft slows down. The engine seemed to respond to the increase in power that I needed to get across the mountain range okay, but they were still making some funny noises back there, and I'm still having to fly them with the cowlings all the way open in order to keep the engines cool. So, again, I'm a little bit concerned about what's going to happen when I pull back on the throttles on these things. Basically, I'm preparing myself for an emergency landing, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to need one, and the airfield we took off from with that runway, it's just not quite long enough for my liking. However, there is a runway just behind it. 2 runways, much longer, looks like it's set up for bomber operations, so I'm going to try and land on that one. Now, actually, that's something I should have addressed a little bit sooner, and I'm sure it's already popped up in the comments section, so for those people that have already dropped a comment, you dropped it a little bit too fast. The US Star on the side of the Beaufighters. Why isn't it in Australian markings? And that is a really good question. As far as I'm aware, there is a mod that'll pop this aircraft in proper 75 Squadron markings, but I don't actually have it. It just defaults to this particular skin. So, it's a minor annoyance, nothing more. Now, I am using the Cannon's 2 cannon brake. This actually does work. It's not as powerful as it is in War Thunder, but it definitely does pull the aircraft up, although in hindsight maybe I shouldn't have bothered. Yeah, as soon as I started backing down on the throttle to come in for landing, both engines immediately failed. So now I'm in an aircraft with no rudder, only one of its 2 elevators, only one of its 2 ailerons, and no working engines, on final approach for an unpowered landing. It's a good thing I like a challenge. So, I've got to try and bring this nose around a little bit, so I'm gently trying to bank the plane, because clearly I have no rudder control, so I have to bank before touchdown, otherwise I'm not going to be able to steer it. Little bouncy on the touchdown, but that was fine. Second contact was a bit better. However, things went all wrong the second I applied the brakes. Obviously there was some damage in the suspension somewhere, and the second I applied the brakes, the left-hand side undercarriage collapsed. The force dropped onto the right-hand side completely, which then collapsed, and the aircraft wound up on its belly. However, it is intact, I am alive, and it is parked on a friendly airfield, so that is technically a successful return to base. And the mission was also a complete success, with only 2 aircraft lost, both of them from Wombat Squadron, who operated as the Vanguard, so we lost 2 P-39s. One was officially killed in action, one was missing in action. The pilot bailed out on the return home due to aircraft damage. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you do, subscribe if you want to see more. Fly smart, fly safe, and I'll catch you in the skies.